Hello, welcome back to Just Scylla. Thank you for tuning in for episode 11. Today, I am so delighted that I am going to talk about something that nobody really wants to talk about. Therapy. I go to therapy. It's important for me. It is helping me become a better person. There are 3 reasons why I am going to therapy. Number 1, I felt like I had a lot of life blocks to be able to achieve the goals that I wanted in life, and I couldn't figure out why. I got scared. I had fear. Number 2, I made really bad relationship decisions, and I felt that I wanted my future to be different. And to do that, I needed to figure out why I made the decisions that I did. And number 3, the really big one, some of you may know that I shared my Me Too story of child sex abuse. And I didn't realize that everything else was a result of that. So we're going to talk about that today. And I'm joined by another phenomenal woman who is a wellness coach, a life coach, and also a survivor of child sex abuse who shared her Me Too story at the same time as I did. And we're going to have a great conversation because we want anybody out there who may have fears about therapy, about being judged for getting therapy, to hopefully make a different decision because you have the rest of your life to live. So, Delissa Richardson, thank you for coming.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad to be here today.
I am so glad to have this conversation with you because when you shared your story, there were so many things that just resonated with me. Do you mind giving a quick version before we go into it?
Oh, certainly. My story of abuse was I was basically abused by a sibling when I was very young for about 3 or 4 years. And it was something that I held inside and did not speak publicly about until a good 30 some odd years later. I had maybe spoken about it one time before we did the movement video that
the Me Too film, which was amazing.
From We Too to Me Too.
Yes. So Delissa, you decided to get therapy at some point in your life. How did that happen?
Well, it was very interesting because I actually tried a couple of times. Mm-hmm. It's something that you really have to be ready for. And I know, we'll get into that. The first time was I was in my 20s and things had just become a bit unmanageable. Not really that I could see, but my sister at the time, my sister saw and said,
Mm-hmm.
I think you should probably go talk to someone. And I had a little bit of, what? I don't need to talk to somebody. I'll be fine. But I loved my big sister so much. And she said, just go talk to someone. And I did. I sought out someone and had a few sessions and then decided to kind of let go because I wasn't really ready for some of the things that were coming up. And then I went about another 17 years or so of making bad decisions and having a lot of fear and stuff before things became truly unmanageable. And then there was just not an option and it had to be done.
I was scared of getting therapy the first time because I felt like it made me, it would mean that I failed. Like I couldn't do it all by myself. And as a strong Black woman, it just went against everything that you're taught to basically be strong and get through it.
Yes. Yeah. That the strong Black woman thing is so damaging. Mm-hmm. I really truly believe that it's so damaging. The superwoman, the carry the weight of the world, on your back. It's not good for us mentally. It's not good for us physically. And as you do look at studies, the studies are starting to bear that out. Mm-hmm. So that stigma that's still in the community about going to therapy, that's one of the reasons why I was so glad you had this program and that I could come on to say that is something that we as a community need to stop.
The first time I got therapy, I made the decision to leave my husband. And it's not something I wanted to do. We were married for 10 years. And I went into a really bad place emotionally, especially when I was by myself. when the children were not there to keep you busy and you have to face this thing that's happening. I just felt like I was getting into a really dark hole. And so I called a therapist and I went for 2 sessions. I literally just got enough therapy at that time, the first time, to get through my big decision. For somebody to just say, this is based on everything that you've said, do you not think that this is good for you? And then you're like, okay, I can do this. But I didn't start to really work on my issues until later.
Now, the first time that you went, did you tell anyone that you were going?
This time that I'm in my 40s is when I'm becoming open. I went by myself. Nobody knew. I actually went through a big part of my divorce by myself because I didn't want to share the pain. You get into yourself. So I'm one of those. I get into myself, which is not a good place to be. So it was embarrassing. I didn't tell anyone. And I think had I not, the truth of the matter is that I had not shared my Me Too story at some point, I wouldn't have had the courage to really start talking. So it gave me a voice. Like once I said something, my entire being just loosened up and I just started talking. But so when did you go to therapy the second time?
The second time I went to therapy I was about, I think it was maybe 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. And that was when I had a very serious health issue because this was something I was still kind of holding on to, all of that controlling stuff that goes on from being an abuse survivor. And one of the worst things that can happen to someone who's already really anxiety riddled is to have a legitimate health scare. So after that health scare, I was really non-functional. I could not drive. I had panic attacks back to back to back. And my doctor basically said, you need to go and get some help. And it's a non-negotiable.
What did you find out? I mean, how long did it take you to start getting to the root of what was really happening?
It took me about 3 to 4 weeks because I went and the first few weeks, my hands are crossed and I'm not really
giving just enough to get into, to get the therapist talking and asking you questions.
I'm like, I'm here because I almost died, and that was scary. So you need to help me through that. I'm trying to, facilitate the whole situation here.
Oh, yeah.
And she's, bless her heart, she was very patient, and she let me kind of do what I wanted to do and get it out for about 3 or so sessions. And then that 4th session, she said, okay, so tell me about, your life. Tell me about your childhood. Mm-hmm. And then, they're professionals for a reason. It's like peeling away the layers. And once that started happening, that's when, that growth started happening. And that's when there was resistance, but it's a safe environment.
Yes.
So you can really let go and you can really get down to the bottom of what the real issue is that's been driving the behaviors in your life for all these years.
So what was the real issue?
For me, the issue was the abuse and the unresolved pain and shame and guilt and all of that goes with it. Something that happened at such a young age, and, next year I will be 50, still from that time all the way up until today, can affect how I make decisions, even to this day.
I get it. The second time, the last time I went to therapy was with my significant other, who I've talked about in, my previous podcast. But I went because we were having issues of trust. First of all, I have trust issues, period, because of things that have happened. But again, when you haven't dealt with those things that happened earlier, you're attracting the things that scare you the most. So we were at a place that I felt like do or die. I need total honesty. I need trust. There are certain things that I need that I'm not going to compromise anymore.
Right.
And I'm not going to be okay with things as they are today. So if you want to be with me, you have to go to a therapist, and I can come with you if you want me to. That's kind of how we went to therapy. And then it turns out that I had all these issues.
Right.
Which
right.
actually led me to attract the kind of men that I was attracting in my life. But what turned out of that was I was with somebody who was willing to do the work. Right. You know, somebody who said, I am going to do the work, to do whatever it takes to be in a relationship with you. So I could work with somebody who's willing to grow, because I had a lot of growing too. So no, I didn't go to therapy for me. I went for him.
Right.
And I grew.
You know, it's something, especially if you're in a relationship. You know, my husband did not know anything that had happened to me for the majority of our marriage. So after a while, I did have to bring him in as well, because there was work to be done there. I could not do this in a bubble because of, you know, I've got my husband, I've got my boys. And it interacts, how I interact with all of them was affected by what happened to me. You know, the fearfulness I had over my children, the fearfulness that I had in my relationship.
Yes.
You know, the lack of trust, like you said. And, you know, when you finally have a good guy, you're suspicious of it.
Oh, yes.
And some of those thoughts start going through your head. So you maybe even fight or do things that aren't necessary, because you've got the self-fulfilling prophecy that you're trying to maintain, that all men are bad. You know, this one is going to do
my life
this,
story.
that, or the other.
That is my life story.
Mine too. Or if he touched me a certain way, well, I would jump through the roof, you know, like a cat. Surprised. He's like, what's going on?
Oh, yeah.
He didn't understand until I had to tell him, and I told him what happened to me in a therapy session. It was safe. I had already discussed it with my therapist, so it was safe. And for many times before that, she had to bring me to that point where I would tell him, because I said, no, why would I tell someone that I was damaged like that?
What is he going to think of
right.
me? I totally get it.
Why would I
You know,
do
you
that?
hit something, you said something that actually led to my third therapy session. Right now I'm in therapy with my daughter. And you say that you got so protective of your kids. You know, I was, and still am to some level, the same way. I'm very protective. That has consequences.
Yes.
You know, where I'm putting so much on my kids, and what they're receiving is different from what I'm putting out. And so now my daughter is an adult, and she actually said, I want us to go to therapy. And I was like, let's go. And
Yes.
I found out that those things from childhood play a role in how I am as a mother, how I'm so protective over them that they're not able to grow into who they're meant to be. So it's a lot of issues that you have to work through when you're coming from that place, and you cannot do it by yourself.
No, you really cannot. There's so many layers, so many things that you don't realize are being affected by that programming, you know, that you had from and it doesn't even have to be, you know, a situation like ours with trauma. Maybe it was another kind of, you know, dysfunctional upbringing, but there's so many things that go into the way that you make decisions based on how you're raised.
Yes.
And yes, if you have children, you're going to make, you know, those same decisions. Okay, well, you know, my mom parented from a place of fear because of things that had happened to her.
Mm-hmm.
I parented from a place of fear because things that had happened to me. It's a cycle.
Wow, I'm having therapy right now. Yes.
It's something that I decided I had to break. It wasn't serving me. It was never serving me, but it got to the point where I realized this is really harming me. Mm-hmm. And I had to get to that point where I realized the harm that it was causing. There's a difference between, okay, it's not serving me anymore, but whatever.
Yes.
To, no, it's harming me.
You're so right. You know, I had weekly therapy with my significant other for 8 months. Then we started going once a month. And now I'm in bi-month, we go twice a month with my daughter. So I've been in therapy for a year, maybe more. And I'm listening to you and going, oh my God, I'm having breakthroughs as we are sitting here, because therapy is a long process. To get to a point where you're finally opening up can take 6 months. And then you get triggers and you go back to the same behaviors. So I'm actually seeing a psychotherapist because they help you change your behaviors, your previous behaviors, so that you're not making the same decisions. So there's so much to talk about with this topic, and I want to go on and on, but we set our time for drive time so people can get in the car and get out and be able to listen to us and then go do something in their lives. So I want to continue this conversation, particularly about what happened to you and I after we came out with our Me Too movement. So that will be in episode 12 next week. So tune in next week. Delisa, thanks for being here.
Thank you.